rises every night at sunset. Chick is right. This is awful silly stuff. Come on, take it all out. Wow! Come here, Chick! Come here! Come here! Wait a minute.
The nation's top comics, Abbott and Costello. Petrified, but hilariously. Plus the dangerous and terrifying Wolf Man, played by Lon Chaney. Plus that fiend out of a nightmare, the vampire Batman, Count Dracula, played by Bela Lugosi. Plus the most dreaded creature of them all, the Frankenstein monster, played by Glenn Strange. Plus a couple of luscious but designing females in the spookiest laugh fest on record.
Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to 31 Days of Monsters, day 29. This is one of the biggies for me, the brain of Frankenstein. What did he just say? I know what you're thinking. Nolan, you're pulling a bait and switch here. You promised Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. And that's what you're getting. The Brain of Frankenstein was the original title for this movie. In fact, I love it so much. Oh, hello, Pumpkin. I even have the script for it. If you ever come across any of these books, Universal Film Script Series, you should order them. They're fantastic. They give you the shooting script and all the background information on your favorite Universal monster movies. So that plug aside. Anyway, this started off as a Brain of Frankenstein, and it was a vehicle for Abbott and Costello, but the producers decided, well, the two biggest moneymakers for Universal are the Universal Monsters and Abbott and Costello. So they figured they better add their name to it. So that's when it was changed to Abbott and Costello Meets Frankenstein. This is a movie that it's so classic, it's so great, and yet it almost never got made because Bud and Lou did not want to do this movie. Lou particularly. Lou could be a bit of a pain in the ass, according to all accounts. He and Bud came up through burlesque and vaudeville, and for Lou, he really wanted to do the bits, the vaudeville bits. That was his thing. He didn't like straying outside his box, and he thought this was just a really dumb idea. But they offered him a $50,000 advance, and they got Charles Barton, who they felt was their best director, to direct them in this movie, so he agreed to it. But he went in reluctantly, and eventually he came around. There's some funny scenes that came about because of his sort of behavior, if you will. There's a sequence where Lou is sitting on the lap of Glenn Strange in this big chair, and he gets his hands mixed up. And Glenn Strange he just starts cracking up every time. There was a lot of outtakes from that sequence. And there's also a scene in which you saw in the trailer where they think they've got the monster locked behind a door, and he punches through the door. And Lou was supposed to stand on a specific spot, and he didn't do it. And Glenn Strange's fist, and Glenn was a big man. He's like 6'3", big leathery cowboy actor. And he punched through that breakaway panel and punched Lou right in the mouth. And that's the scene you actually see. They kept it in there because Lou held it together. He did a great job. We're treated in the beginning of this to a really wonderful animated sequence that is attributed to Walter Lantz, who is known for his Woody Woodpecker cartoons at Universal. I know it's attributed to him. I've also read where they weren't sure if he did it, but according to IMDb, it does say that Walter Lantz did do this. So maybe they've locked that down since then. Here's a picture of the boys and the monsters. Another one of Bud and Lou. They did a really great job with these sets. There's nothing cheap looking. This was an inexpensive film for Universal, one of the least expensive films of that year, and it grossed more money than anything that they made. So they got a nice return on their dollar, but they put the money in the sets. I mean, this dungeon sequence is fantastic. It always, I mean, look at that. The makeup. This is the first of the Universal Monsters films that was not done by the originator of all of these makeups, Jack Pierce. By then, Universal was bought out and became Universal International. Jack Pierce was kind of relegated out the door because his techniques were sort of considered as old-fashioned. And so the new head of makeup, Bud Westmore, and his assistant, Jack Keevan, who you heard me talk about for Creature from the Black Lagoon, came up with new processes, latex and various appliances. Instead of building everything up from scratch as Pierce did, these guys brought it into a more modern era. And for the actors' sake, they were never more comfortable wearing the makeup, and it took a lot less time. It only took Lon Chaney and Glenn Strange an hour in the makeup chair versus 5 hours. And then the removal of it also was a lot easier on them. A couple firsts in this film, too. This is the only film that Larry Talbot and Dracula share the screen together, where they actually interact. So the Wolfman and Dracula actually interact in this film. It's the first time since Son of was it Son? Yeah, first time since Son of Frankenstein that well, actually, really Bride of Frankenstein that the monster speaks. He spoke in Frankenstein, or he spoke in Bride of Frankenstein. He spoke in Son of Frankenstein, but only after Igor's brain was transferred into him. And then he doesn't speak again. You know, they never explain why, you know, he lost that speech. But he does speak briefly in this film too. Not much. It's no big deal, but it's just interesting. There's a nice blooper in here too, where Dracula is going to bite the neck of Lenore Albert, and we're watching the scene through a mirror, and we can see Dracula in there. I mean, I just cannot understand how somebody could let that go by. You know, I mean, that's like one of the tenets of vampires. You can't see their reflection. I mean, it's how Van Helsing spots Dracula in the very first Universal film. I don't know how that one got by. It's weird. This movie is great for so many reasons. The story works. They treat the comedy well. Bud and Lou get to do some bits and stuff, but they also show fear, and the monsters are treated well. They're treated as monsters. The Wolfman's a little clumsy in this, you know, as part of some of the setups and gags, which is a little annoying at times. But it's Lon Chaney. I mean, it's not a stand-in. It's not a, you know, somebody else playing that creature. This is the Wolfman we've known and loved for all those years. Same thing, Glenn Strange. You know, the only guy to play the Frankenstein monster as many times as Boris. And then the biggest is the return of Bela Lugosi for only the second time on screen playing Dracula. That in itself is a treat. He was 65 years old at the time. He was still suffering under his morphine addiction that he had gotten addicted to. He was having, I think it was back pains, and he was prescribed morphine for it, and he got addicted to it. And he eventually beat it. Checked himself into a clinic and beat his addiction with the help of Frank Sinatra. Actually, Frank Sinatra helped pay those medical bills for him. He was a very generous guy, and loved Bela Lugosi's movies and stuff. So that's kind of a cool little aside. This is a small picture, and you can't, I don't know if you can really make it out. If you're on your computer, you might be able to blow it up. Lon Chaney played all the major monsters. He played Dracula, played Frankenstein, played, of course, the only one to play the Wolfman, and the Mummy. He played Frankenstein he's the first one to play Frankenstein after Boris Karloff. When they made this movie, the laboratory sequence here where the monster picks up Lenore Albert and throws her out the window, it's Glenn Strange that picks her up at first, and we see him carrying her over to the window. But in the interim there, at one point, Glenn Strange broke his ankle. He's wearing those really thick boots, and he twisted his ankle and couldn't do the final scene in that sequence where he actually throws her out the window. So Lon Chaney, the junior, the former Frankenstein, stepped in. Key Van and Westmore put the makeup on him, and it's him that throws her out the window and then turns around and charges the boys here and chases them out of the laboratory. And if you look close, you can see it's Chaney's face and Chaney's mannerisms. He's much more brutish in the way he moves versus the more robotic look of Glenn Strange. So that's always a cool thing to look for. I was like, oh, there he is. There's Chaney. Bud and Lou, this is one of the last great films of theirs. I think the final great one was Abbott and Costello, Meet the Killer, Boris Karloff, which was not the next film. I think it was The Wistful Widow of Wagon Gap was the next one after this. And then came A&C Meet the Killer. And then after that, I think that the movies really tailed off. And there was a lot of, downtime in between their great films. Between 1940 and 1943, every one of their movies was really great. And then Lou suffered from rheumatic fever, and he was out of commission for, I think, a year. And it really took its toll on him. And also he suffered the loss of his only son, Butch, who drowned in the family pool. And so those two things, when it came back to making the movies, I think are really apparent in Lou's character in the films that he made. He was a little bit more, I don't know what the word is, sad. The character was more sad, less childlike. When you see the childlike exuberance of Lou in those early films, oh, I'm a bad boy, that kind of stuff. The Lou from the radio and in those early movies. And, he started to want to do more of those pathos style performances like his idol, Charlie Chaplin. And it just, their timing seemed to get lost as well, because comedy is all about timing. I'm nitpicking, but I look at the stuff and I analyze it, and I've watched them a million times, and you can see where they're off their game, with the exception of when they, even in the bad movies, when they would go into their routines, their bits that they had done for years and years in burlesque, they're always on point. The Naughty 90s, which I think was around 1944. It's one of those ones after all that stuff had happened. Not a great movie, but that's the one when you look for the Who's on First routine, that's the one that you'll see come up, and they kill it. They just kill it because their bits are so ingrained in them and their timing and everything. It's just the acting parts in some of these later movies which don't really work. But excuse me. But at any rate, by the time they did this one, even though they didn't want to do it, the magic was there. Everything came together so great. When you read the script, the story is all there, but the bits aren't really there. They had hired John Grant, who was their comedy writer, who would always be part of the script writing as far as like inserting bit here, inserting all the comedy bits. And he's the guy who basically adds the comedy to the structure of the adventure or story that they're going to be doing. So again, I can't say enough about this movie. I've watched this since I was a kid. It's the kind of movie that you looked in the TV guide to see when it was going to air, and you set store by that. Whatever was going on, you had to cancel it because A&C Meets Frankenstein was on that Saturday morning. So we got a lot of comments here today. That's great. Let's see who is in the room and wish everybody a good morning. Our regulars, Hyper Kaiju, good morning. Otis Rose. Rob Fellows, good morning. Monster Fan, greetings fellow ghouls. My mom showed this to me, age 4, and my little bro, and my love affair with monsters and the fantastic and all media was born. It has never gone away. Thank you, Bud and Lou. Yeah, this movie has influenced generations of monster kids. I feel bad for the kids today that don't have creature features on Saturdays or Abbott and Costello, which they would show every Saturdays. The Little Rascals, that's another one. Those used to be on Sundays when I was a kid, and I love the Little Rascals. Christopher Juliano, good morning. He just watched this the other night. He says this is his favorite. Dead Drop, good to see you back. Gomer Kyle, good morning. Dracula in Mirror? I know, right? How do you miss that one? Scott Clark loves the Abbott and Costello movies. George Travelos, happy Thursday, everyone. It's almost Friday. Rob Yance loves this movie. Statistical Zero loves it. Good morning, all. I love this movie. First Abbott and Costello movie I ever watched. What kid wouldn't love this? Yeah, you could see Pumpkin's tail. Yeah, she was down here for a little bit. I don't know if you could hear when I was playing the trailer. She had a squeaky toy down here. She was chewing on it. And you hear, hi, Pumpkin. You are very good. Yeah, Pumpkin always steals the show when she shows up. I leave the door open in case she wants to come down and say hello. As I get older, Bud Abbott gets funnier. Put your arms down. Bud was the greatest straight man in comedy history. When Lou would go off track, he always knew how to reel him in. Bud, on this set, it must have been something because both Bud and Lon Chaney had horrible drinking problems. Chaney to, I think, bury the demons of his past, and Bud because he was epileptic, and he used to drink to sort of calm himself down because he was always afraid of having a seizure. And they had to get everything out of him by 4 o'clock because otherwise, he was toast. It's sad, because there's a lot of things that they could do today, for people with that. Glenn Strange was the wrong guy to mess with. He was, from what Bob Burns says, Glenn Strange was just the sweetest guy in the world, just a gentle giant. In fact, everybody who knew Cheney said the same thing, that when he wasn't drinking, he was just a sweet man. But you know, that brought it's almost a metaphor for the Wolfman if you think about it. You know, everybody loves Larry Talbot, and then instead of the moon, it's the booze that turned him into, a monster. Good morning, Dr. Mask. Tonight the moon will be full and I'll turn into a wolf. And that's true. Well, we're very close, but Halloween this year on Saturday, it's going to be the first full moon on Halloween since 1944. Imagine that. The last full moon was the same year they made House of Frankenstein. Pretty cool. That's right. Glenn Strange was Butch Cavendish and the Lone Ranger, the guy whose gang killed all but one of the rangers in that canyon. I'm a bit of a wolf myself. Great line. There's a line in there where Bud is sitting next to Lenore Albert, and now she's already been turned into a vampire, and she says, "You're so round, so full-bodied," and then Lou says, "So firmly packed," and it's obvious that's a joke, but most audiences today wouldn't get it. But that was the advertising line for one of the most famous advertising campaigns in history for Lucky Strike cigarettes. Gomer says this is the first time in a few years. Saw this for the first time a few years ago on Sven Guli's show on MeTV. Well, it must have been something to see this the first time. I can't remember because I was so young. McDougal, you still want your exhibits? Here comes one now. There's a little cameo in this, well, sort of a cameo, voice cameo at least, at the very end, where they think they're rid of the monsters, and then a voice out of the ether says, "Oh, that's too bad. I was hoping to get in on the fun. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm the Invisible Man." And that's Vincent Price, who played the Invisible Man in 1939's Return of the Invisible Man. So that was another great piece of casting there. Hollywood and drugs, a lot of sad stories. Yeah. The tears behind the clowns. I know they probably couldn't have gotten Karloff back as the monster, but you'd figure they'd have found a role for him somewhere in this film. He didn't want to be in it. They did want him to reprise the monster role, and he didn't want to be in it. But they coaxed him into promoting the film, because there's a lot of photographs of Boris standing outside theaters with the marquee there, or standing in front of cardboard cutouts in front of the entrance to the movie theaters and stuff. And I'm sure he got paid to do that, to promote it. But he turned it down. He didn't want to be in it. Rob likes this line when Lou says, "Back, back." He thinks I'm Dracula. They do call him Dracula in a couple scenes. I love the scene where Larry Talbot comes in for the first time and meets the boys. He says, "You must be Chick Young, and you must be Wilbur Gray." And Chick Young and Bud goes, "Yeah, so what?" Or, "Yeah, what about it?" He just cuts him right off. I just love that. It cracks me up. Oh no, he says, "Yeah, so what?" It's so New York. "Yeah, so what?" gosh, I hate when this thing skips like that. Like I said before, every time I scroll down here, sometimes it'll just skip all the way down to the bottom, and I got to scroll back up because I start at the top. Let's see here. Okay, I think I'm back where I'm supposed to be. It used to be on Channel 5 out of New York quite often back in the day. That's where I saw it. Abbott and Costello interacting with the actual classic monsters is great, though it did well with them in the name. I actually wish they kept the working title. Graham, do you have any plans or idea if you are keeping a morning show or something going past this month? These installments have been great. Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm definitely going to do more. I'm going to do an evening show called The Storytellers, where I'm going to basically deconstruct visual storytelling and interview writers, writer/artists, cartoonists, and talk about the process of creating visual imagery and for storytelling. So I think that'll be fun. But then I think I'm also going to do a morning show, and I haven't decided quite yet. You know, some type of people seem to like the movie type stuff, and I'm a huge Star Trek fan, so I'm thinking of possibly doing like Star Trek, breaking down each Star Trek episode, or talking about various kinds of movies, westerns, gangster films, just mixing them up and stuff, and talking about those kind of things that I love. So the answer is yes. I'm just trying to settle in on it. Most of the Little Rascals' real life stories ended badly. Yeah, that's true. I'm sorry I missed this episode. I love Abbott and Costello. Well, if you're here, you didn't miss it. Frankly, I don't get it. And frankly, you never will. That double back look that Bud gives us is funny. I love this, this is a couple sequences where, Lou's got all the girls and Bud's trying to at least get one. And where they first arrive at the island, and Lou is complaining about, remember that time with those two girls? Yours had teeth. He says, yours had teeth too. He said, did you see that tooth? Yes, I happened to see that tooth. So it's like he knew this girl had these awful teeth. And then Lou says, that girl had so much bridge work. Every time I kissed her, I had to pay a toll. That's awesome. Being a Brit, I don't ever remember seeing this on TV, but we get the Hammer spoof "Carry On Screaming" once a year. My gateway movie to horror. Oh, cool. I didn't know that. "Carry On Screaming." Never heard of that one. I've got an annoying cat crying at me right now. Right? Would Pumpkin like to have a playmate right about now? George thinks The Invisible Man and The Return of the Invisible Man are my favorite back-to-back Universal movies ever. Huh. I haven't seen Return in years, probably decades. But of course, the original, the Claude Rains ones, I have on Blu-ray. On the subject of creature features, did you have a favorite late-night horror host? Well, the creature features that I liked was a Saturday morning when I was growing up in Florida. out of Tampa. That was Dr. Paul Bearer. He was great. He was my favorite host. He was funny too. Dracula and the Wolfmen both drown. Yes and no. They appear to drown, but in Jeff Roven's Return of the Wolfman book, you find out that they did not. Because they can't drown. You know, the Wolfman can't be killed like that. Neither can Dracula. Dracula can, actually, as we saw in Prince of Darkness. Running water can destroy the vampire. So I guess Dracula probably could have been killed from that instance. And that's just not just movie. That was actually in Stoker's novel as well. Boy, oh boy, you guys are putting me to work. 365 days of monsters. Oh my gosh. I have to shove my breakfast down and get down here and get all my assets together before the show goes on. And this one today, I was really, really rushing on, really hurrying, because there's so much to talk about in this movie. And I know there's so much I'm leaving out too. Star Trek episodes a day. I don't know if I'd do it every day. Maybe like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday thing. You know, I got to figure it out. Mary. Now, what if there's a third girl comes along? Is she pretty? Gorgeous, naturally. We'll call her Mary. Abbott and Costello Meet the Invisible Man wasn't bad. And it has Fred Mertz, too. Yeah, not a fan. Not a fan. So you have this theory. If you watch an Abbott and Costello movie and Bud has a mustache, turn it off. If you watch a Humphrey Bogart movie and Humphrey Bogart's wearing a bow tie, turn it off. Trust me on this. It was a period when both those guys, the movies weren't good. Dr. Mask would love Star Trek. Yeah, as I mentioned, well, actually, after the show, Kelly and I kept talking backstage here, and we were saying, both of us are saying that the three major pop culture influences on our lives happen to be the same ones. It was monsters, comics, and Star Trek. Those three things are still my three favorite things when it comes to pop culture. You know, Star Wars is fine. I like it, you know, for its modernness, but nothing beats the original Star Trek to me. Hi, Mike. Just found out that if you Bing search Universal horror films, nearly everyone is available to view for free. I've been running it nonstop for days. Oh, that's cool. Good to know. Yeah, there is a service that has the Universal monsters, and it must be on that. Somebody had said what it was in a previous show, but I don't remember what that service was. So if you Bing search Universal horror films, nearly everyone is available to view for free. Okay, cool. I wonder if they have the Mole Men. That movie should be better. If you haven't seen the Mole Men, great costume. I mean, great monster-looking creatures, but whew, that's a tough slog. I remember hearing about Shock Theater with Vampira, but that's before my time. Elvira, I think, was almost global. In North Carolina, we had the Cool Ghoul. Oh, Hyper Kaiju says they almost have almost all the Toho movies, too. Johnny Rando says he found the Ghost Breakers on Daily Motion. Okay, cool. Well, this is a good Reference for you guys here. You know, if you haven't been able to catch some of these films, it looks like they're, with a little search, you can find them. A lot of Elvira fans here, it seems like. All right, let's see here. Hugh Beaumont doesn't help the Mole Men. Dead Punk Gage, there were a couple of good thriller Star Trek episodes, not many. A DS9 comes to mind. Don't remember the name, but it had an alien feel to it, if anybody remembers it. Yeah, I'm not a fan of most of the Star Trek iterations outside the original series, with the exception of Enterprise. I thought Enterprise captured that adventurous feel without it being so, you know, virtue signaling over the top. Yes, Alan Napier he's like the Grand Vizier or whatever of the mole people in that. All right. I rewatched your interview with AZ and I'm like, he was towards you. Your Batman was my great and helped me through some hard times. Oh, well, thank you. Glad to hear that. TOS or I changed the channel. Yeah. I'm with you there, brother. I love classic Trek. I was in Next Generation and DS9, but politics killed any love I had for TNG, sadly. Yeah. Oh, mole people. Yeah, thanks, James. I said the mole men. My love of the Fantastic Four is breaking through. All right. Well, I think we've about covered today's show in the comments here. See if did I get all my images up here? Yeah, I got them all. Okay, so tomorrow we're coming down to the last two, the big two for me. Big three, really. I mean, this one, tomorrow's show, which is The Crawling Eye, and The Thing from Another World, are three movies that I can watch over and over and over and anytime. You know, I can put them on, listen to them, or I can just sit down when it's halfway, you know, if it's running on TV or something like that, and sit down. Oh, it's got me. I just love those these movies, and to me, that's the mark of a great film. They're fun movies. They're nostalgic, or they're great, or all of the above. You know, they encompass a lot of the things that I enjoy when I'm watching the film. So tomorrow we'll be talking about Forrest Tucker, two-fisted scientist, as he deals with the Trollenberg Terror, also known as the Crawling Eye. So be same time tomorrow, 8 a.m. as usual. So I hope you enjoyed Abbott and Costello Meets Frankenstein, and we'll see you tomorrow morning. Thanks again for tuning in, guys. We'll see you. Bye-bye.